So welcome back. We are holding the Nefesh HaHaim. We've concluded Sha'ar Gimel. We're now in a part which is called Prakim, because they're just like independent chapters. And he's speaking. He speaks now in the second person to the reader. He says, "Ata hakoyre na'im, my dear reader. Hine hidrachticha bezrat Hashem b'netivot ha'emet. I've guided you in pathways of truth. Lohorot lefanecha." Haderech telech ba levetach. So you see how part of what's driving the Nefesh HaChaim, and think of him as a Rosh Hashiva. So he has Talmidim, and he's trying to guide them in a lifestyle. And we talked about how it's a response to the rise of the Hasidic movement, which is also a lifestyle. And he thinks maybe it's not perfectly on focus, on target. And so he's giving his Litvisha Yeshiva Bachrim a lifestyle, a path of divine service, of Avodas Hashem, which is, yes, bringing in Kabbalah and great depth and a lot of kavanah and sincerity and a little bit of knowledge of Shemois and so forth. But it's different than Hasidut, which places great emphasis on kavanah, and he has continued to emphasize Ha'ikar hu ha'ma'aseh. The main thing is do the mitzvahs. Kavanah is bonus points, but you got to do the mitzvahs according to the Shulchan Aruch. That's the main thing. So he's been guiding us in the pathways of truth to teach us the way to go. V'tucha lechanech atzmecha. La'at la'at, you can train yourself. B'seder hamadregot hanal. And we just concluded with learning about the Madrega of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Madrega of the Avos HaKadoshim. And we can't always live on those high levels, but we can aspire to them once in a while. When we're davening, we could, feel a sense of Einod Milvado. I'm totally attached to God and there's nothing else in my world. So he admitted that, it's not constant, there's ups and downs, but sometimes you have inspiration. Lefi tohar levavcha, according to the purity of your heart. Lefi hasagatcha, how much you can fathom your learning. Yoiser mima she'aruk lefanecha kan, v'gam lefi rova hergel. So you will, if you follow this pathway and you live it and you practice it, so you can internalize a lot of things more than I've written here, and continuing it. Day after day and week after week and year after year is also an important part of the practice.
He follows the principle. I forget the source. You'll know the source. Acharei Amasa Nimshachota Levavot, something like that. Exactly. What is it? Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't get it exactly, but
I think you did. Hamasim Nimshachim Levavot. That is.
Yeah, where does that come from?
The Sefer HaChinuch is one of the places that says that. So yeah.
Okay.
Ubeinecha tireh shekol asher targil atzmecha yoyse b'kol madrega me'elu anal yitvasef belibcha tahara al tarascha. So this is part of his sort of manifesto, part of his idea. You'll see with your own eyes that the more you accustom yourself to do these things, and to seek to grow in your Avodas Hashem, this will automatically or naturally increase the purity of your heart. Yidvasef belibcha tar al tarasecha. So don't think, I need to purify my heart before I can do stuff. No, do stuff and that will purify your heart. Like you said, Shimon. Achrei masim nimshachol levavos. Don't work on your heart, work on your deeds, and that will Mamela affect your heart. Hein be'esek ha'toira, ve'hein be'kiyum ha'mitzvahs, v'yiraso ve'avaso yizbarach. So it'll affect your learning, it'll affect your mitzvahs, particularly mitzvahs of Yiras Hashem and Avos Hashem. So now that you're a really serious yeshiva bacher or an avreich or whatever, and you're really into this, you're now in a dangerous situation of conceit, of arrogance. Omnam hi shamer vehi zaher ma'od, shelo tazuach da'atcha alecha, v'tisnase levavcha, There's a pitfall here, a common pitfall, and I think in yeshiva you can find this, where people all of a sudden they think they're really great, and they really are doing good things, and they're really learning, and they're really davening, but they have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, and they think that they're buddies with Rabbeinu Shalom. And so he's warning you against that pitfall. Don't let it go to your head and think that because you're serving God with real purity of thought, about shkafa rishoina, lo targish kol kach behitnasut libcha mizeh. You won't feel it at first, how it's gone to your head. B'tzorach et halefashvesh ulamashmesh b'zeh me'od. So you have to be aware of this and continue to work on yourself and check yourself that you haven't let this go to your head, because that does happen. I want to tell a story. It's a medieval story about a Kabbalist who was a young man, and he truly was a very advanced Kabbalist and a really holy person. He got carried away, and he thought if he could get a meeting with the Pope, he could convert the Pope and bring the Geula. Okay, so he had a really high goal, he's going to bring Mashiach because he's going to tell the Pope the emes, and the Pope's going to be makabel the emes from him because he's coming with all this Taras Alev and Shemos HaKadoshim and whatever. Guess what happened? It did not turn out well. He went to the Pope and he told him, whatever he told him. The way I understand the story, I think this is a historical thing. This is not just like a legend. He was put to death. He was like, he challenged the Catholic Church, and you don't mess with the Catholic Church in the years of the Inquisition. And so he let it go to his head, like he was truly a good guy and everything, but he had an exaggerated sense of his own powers, and it was fatal in that case. So you got to keep your feet on the ground and, be aware of who you are. Katuv mefurish to avas Hashem kol gvad lev. Okay, pasuk in Mishlei, that the idea of being conceited, of being full of yourself, called gval lev, of having this sense of self-importance, it's actually an abomination to God. Okay, very, very harsh word, to'avat Hashem. Like Hashem despises this. Sha'afim lo yisroya, ha'isnasus le'enei b'nei adam. And even if you're not flaunting it, and people don't know how arrogant you are and how conceited and how much you hold to yourself because you keep it sort of quiet. Rak b'machshavas halev levad ve'enei atzmo. So you keep it to yourself, but inside you think, I'm really great. I'm a really big tzaddik. And I'm really, whatever. I'm serving God with all this purity. He to'eva mamash lefanav yitbarach. So it's despised by God. Ki yadua shehi hashoresh v'haseor shebeisa l'kol amidos ros. You do see this sometimes in shul, where people are really self-important, and they tell you this and they tell you that, and this is how you should do it, and this I know what I'm talking about, and they're important in their own eyes. And it's a fundamental human thing. It's built on the ego and self-esteem, which everybody has to have healthy self-esteem. But you could definitely get carried away with it. And it's dafka, a lot of the people that get carried away with it are people who are truly intelligent. They're probably above average intelligence, and they're above average tzidkis. They're good people, but they get carried away with themselves. And it's a sort of a likely pitfall for people who are good people and they're working on themselves, and they let it get to their head. And it's a really bad thing. So you have to be really careful. Va'amru and Saita shekala misyoher. Yoira is like also arrogance, another word for that. Sanctimoniousness, perhaps. Shekola misyoher.
Like showing off type of thing.
Yes, yoira, right? Yeah. Shekola misyoher ki'ilu bana bama. It's as if you've built like an altar when you're not allowed to build altars, because again, you're showing off your frumkeit. V'shchina miyalelet alav v'ki'ilu doichek rav lo yichbarach shmo. So the Shechina is crying and whining, and it's like you're pushing God away. Shekoibel alav oimer ein ani v'hu yecholim ladur ke'echad. There's a phrase like that in the Gemara. That, and this makes sense. When a person is really full of himself, there's no room for God in his world. So Chazal use this lashon that God says, me and this guy can't live in the same place. And it's not because God doesn't have place for him, it's because he doesn't have place for God. Because the whole world is about me. And so if it's all about me, there's really no room for God there. So that happens. V'katsar hamatzah mishtareya. This goes on and on. V'oilo leben hamegarish es aviv bizroya mi beis paltin shel aviv. Woe to the son that exiles his own father through power from the palace. So again, think about what you're doing. You're in the yeshiva, you're in the shul, and you're davening so great, and you're learning so wonderfully, and with such holy intent that you've pushed God out of the picture. Hifligu bazal me'oid ad she'amru sham shu ki'ilu oived kochavim mazalois v'kafar be'ikar v'ki'ilu bal kol harayos oivei. So he's oived avodah zara, he's a koifer, he's in Gili Arayis, v'amrum psachim, kolam isyoher, im chacham, chachmato mistaleket heimenu. And it has also other negative outcomes. This is also like a yeshiva joke, sort of. The question is kavod, honor, is it a positive thing? Or is it just the absence of dishonor? That's the chakira, a yeshiva chakira. Is kavod, to achieve an honorable stature? Or is it just the total avoidance of dishonor? So the proof that it's a davar bifnei atzmo, it's a positive thing, because look how many people debase themselves to achieve honor. So you see that honor is not avoiding debasement, because people debase themselves to achieve honor, which is true. People sometimes make fools of themselves by, tooting their own horn, essentially. And so he's talking about that if you're misyoher, even if you're truly wise, you'll lose your own wisdom. V'kol asher yiras Hashem naga b'libo tisamer sa'arot rosho v'tidamer eino v'aloiso alibo mimilam duhu razal zot. So you got to take this very seriously. You should make your hair stand on end, and you should cry. Who did we learn this from? Hillel Zaken. Asher yadua mufursam b'divreim zal haflagat an besanuso. He was super humble. B'shifluso hanoira. And really self-debasing. So im kol zeh asher nizdamin liyado pam achas kitzat inyan shayanira behashkafa ki hitnasut lefi madreges goydel nemichas ruchai tekaf nenash al zeh shenis alma himenu halacha. So he's referring to a particular Maisa where Hillel, who was truly a great and humble rabbi and didn't make anything of himself, but it once happened that Lefi, according to how great a man he was and how great his humility was, he let something go to his head a little bit, and immediately he was unable to issue a proper psak halacha. So if that's Hillel, who was truly a great and humble man, so I actually think that although this exists, and I know people like this, I think I have another funny story about Rosh Yeshivas. A plumber, a year at Shemayim, he's a really good guy. He comes to Olam Haba, and they don't make that big a deal. And then Rosh Hashiva comes in, and it's a really big deal, and there's trumpets and all the angels, and everybody's, there's huge crowds. And so somebody says, what's going on? The plumber was a much bigger tzaddik, really, than the Rosh Hashiva. And they explain to him, Yeah, but there's a lot of good plumbers who are Yarei Shemayim. They come to Olam Haba all the time. But a Rosh Hashiva that gets into Olam Haba, that's very rare. So I like that. Um, being a Rosh Hashiva is challenging, and they're in a position of power, and there's money going through their hands, and they have the last word about everything. So they're in this challenging position of not letting it go to their heads. And Reb Chaim Volozhin, besides everything else, was a Rosh Hashiva, and so he's talking sort of to Rosh Yeshiva and Yeshiva Bachrim. You have to be careful not to fall into becoming conceited. I think for us, for Balabatim, this isn't our primary problem. Like we have to keep encouraging ourselves that we are doing anything and that we're achieving something and that we're still in the game. Not to drop out with Yeush. And maybe it's also our generation, or I don't know. I just don't. It's not our primary challenge. I just don't think that. Anyway.
I think there's also a phenomenon. I think it's much more. I mean, I could be opening up a Pandora's box here, but I'll stick with it. I think it's much more a phenomenon amongst Ashkenazim, and some of it has nothing to do with being Shomer Shabbat or not. I see it amongst just the general population. It could be a function of just a few centuries of Haskalah in the West. When they look at Rabbanim, not everybody's so bowled over, so it keeps a lot of the Rabbanim, slightly more humble. I think there's more respect shown in the Sephardi world. I mean, you got Sephardi mafiosos that very respectful of their Rabbanim. Ashkenazim, I get the feeling, whenever an Ashkenazi walks into a room, he or she thinks, they're the smartest person that's in the room. Yeah. I think it, and when they look at, authority, well, I'm smarter than, I'm what is the Rav know? It's like I'm just as smart or something. They don't actually say it, but they could think it or act it. I just think it's more of a, it might be a little gizanut thing, but
also, have you ever met a Sephardi atheist? I don't think they exist.
That's what I'm saying. What my acid test is? These duchanim throughout the country that have the tefillin, and you have the Chabadnikim or whatever, these little tefillin stations. See who stops. See who stops by these places. It's invariably Edot Mizrach, Anshe, the Mizrachim. The Ashkenazim, they're too smart. That's my theory.
Okay, let's go on and learn another one. גם תוכל לגרום לאדם ההתנסות בלב, מאשר הוא אויב אלוהיו יזברך בטהרת הלב, שיקל בעיניו חס ושלום, אם ירא מי ומי שאין ענייני עבודתו לא יזברך, במחשבה טהורה, ומקיים ככל הכתוב בתורת השם בלא דבקות. This is interesting. You have here now a person learning, let's say Nefesh HaHaim, or maybe he's a chassid, but he's a person who's really trying to serve God on a really high level. B'machshava tahira. And he sees another, let's call him a Pashariyid, another Jew that is trying to be Mekayim kol hakatuv b'Torah below dveikus. And so he looks down at him, he's condescending towards him. V'kol shekain k'shiyira eze ish oisek b'Torah Hashem, v'yizboinen alav shu shelo lishma. That guy is shelo lishma. Yizbaze be'einav me'oid chas v'shalom. V'hu avon plili. Harachaman yatzilenu. So this is good. This is, again, Reb Chaim Volozhin warning his Talmidim, people learning the Nefesh HaHaim who are on a very high level. The book is very esoteric. The exercises that we've learned in davening of how we're supposed to be davening and what we're supposed to think about are very exalted. And now he's warning us, don't get carried away with yourself. Don't look down on the other guy that's just doing things simply and without this high level. If you do that, if you look down on him, you are guilty of a grave transgression. Ki be'emes kol inyin tahatara salev be'avodasu yizbarach. Because let's get back to brass tacks. What's the ikar in avodas Hashem? It's not the taras halev. The taras halev is la mitzvah. It's an additional, it's a good tazach. It's nice to have, it's not must have. Velo le'ikuva. It's not me'akev. You can do mitzvahs without it. Kamo shekasiv, Sof Sharv Aleph, we've been through this. Yisbar od lahalanim yirtz Hashem. V'kol ha'mekayim mitzvahs Hashem. K'chol asher tzivanu b'torah kadosha shebichsav u'be'al peh. You do the Shulchan Aruch. Af below dveikus. Nikra gam kein oived Elokim. You're called a servant of God. Ve'ahuv lefanav yitbarach. So even a person who decides, you know what? Let's say it's the 1820s and there's a new Hasidic movement and there's new yeshivas and they're learning about serving God on all these high levels. And some Jew says, you know what? I don't need that. My father didn't do it and my grandfather didn't do it. I'm a Pashut Yid and I put on tefillin and I put on talis and I daven, I keep Shabbos and kashrus. And this is what I've been doing and I don't really plan on changing, or I'm not too concerned with taras halev. I just do the things the best I can. So for someone to be judgmental towards that person or dismissive or condescending is a big no-no. Ha'adam ha'oisek b'taras Hashem afilu shelo lishma im ki vadai she'adayin eino b'madrega ha'gvoya amitis omnam chalila v'chalila levazoisoi. So this person that's doing mitzvah shelo lishma, true, it's not the highest level imaginable, but chas v'shalom, to disgrace him, to debase him, levazoiso, afilu belev, without saying anything, v'adarabba, kol ish Yisrael mechuyev gam linhog bo kavod, kamo shekasav bismoila, oisher v'kavod, v'darshu razal lemasmeilim ba. Beautiful drush of Chazal about oisher v'kavod b'yamina u'b'smoila oisher v'kavod. So there's oirech yamim, there's life itself is in the right, and in the left there's oisher v'kavod, wealth and honor. And the left, that's the second best, that's the weak hand. So those are the people that are doing Torah and mitzvahs left-handedly, lemasmeilim ba. The people who are doing it right-handedly, doing it lishma, they will get a richas yamim, oilam shekulo, toy ve'aroich, and they'll get it all. The people that are masmeilim ba, that are doing Torah and mitzvahs shelo lishma, they will get osher v'kavod, wealth and honor. So you see that one dare not dishonor a person who is doing Torah and mitzvahs shelo lishma. Ubezoar yeshev Torah Hashem tmima kama eslon lebarnash lishtadla beoraisa to call man dishtadla beoraisa lehavi lechayim. Anybody who gets involved with Torah gives him life. Afilu man dishtadla beoraisa velo ishtadla balishma kidikayos. He gets involved in learning, maybe for the money, maybe for the kavod, for whatever reason he decides to do that. Zachi la'agar tov ba'alma den v'lo dainin elei bahu alma. So even though he's doing Torah shelo lishma, in other words, improperly, he still will be zoiche to schar tov in this world, and even in olam haba, he will avoid harsh judgment. V'tachazi ksiv oirech b'yamina Bismoila oishe v'kavod, bismoila oishe v'kavod, agar tov v'shalva eslei v'hai alma. It will be good for him in this world and the next. Harei she'afilu ha'adam asher asku b'torasu yizbarach, shelo lishma k'ra'oi, ele b'shvil eze pniya, for whatever reason, the garmei, for himself, rakim einu lekanter. There's something where a person, let's say, is learning Torah in order to show that the Torah is not true, or to make trouble, or fight the rabbis, or something like that. That's called lekantor, and that's truly bad. But we're not talking about that. As long as it's rak eino lekintur chas v'shalom, asher alav amru razal, noyach lo shetishapech shel yasu al panav. Better that he had not been born. Better that, he had disintegrated or been a miscarriage. But that's for someone who's trying to destroy the Torah and to be an enemy of the Torah. V'kein amru shenasis lo samamavis chas v'shalom. And for that person who's like, he's learning Torah to show that the Torah is not true or something like that, which of course there are people like that, then for him the Torah is poison. It's like samamavis. So, but we're not talking about that guy. We're talking about a regular guy who is learning Torah shelo lishma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu kovea lo schar toiv k'magia lo oishe v'kavod v'shalva b'hai alma v'gam lo daininin leba hu alma alo isa machshava v'pniya shekevon ba v'kol shekein im einu mechaven klal l'shum pniya legarmei hagam she'ein kavonaso lishma. So it looks like he's just sort of stam. Ein kavanaso lishma dafka, hainu l'shem Torah. We're going to explain what that means. Gimel Sha'ar Dalid b'shem Rosh Zal. Ela ikar askoba. Why is this person learning? Stama. So the Nefesh HaHaim claims asher kil lishma dami. If a person is learning stam, not for any personal benefit, and also not totally lishma, but it's considered like lishma. Hare esik toiraso yakar ma'od be'enav yitbarach yoyse mikol mitzvahs lishma b'kedushas v'taras ha'machshava k'ra'oi. Okay, one of the main themes of Sha'ar Dalid of Nefesh HaHaim that we Bezrat Hashem will learn together is that Talmud Torah is in a class unto itself, much higher than all the other mitzvahs. Okay, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. And there's a pasuk, kol chafatzecha lo yishvu ba, that nothing can compare to Talmud Torah. So here, the Nefesh HaHaim is building on that, and he's saying even something more than that. He's saying, Asik Torah of this person that's not learning lishma, he's only learning stam. But his stam is kilishma dami, and it's much greater than someone else who is doing all the mitzvahs, let's say talis and tefillin or Shabbos or whatever else they're doing, and they're doing them lishma, bikdushas, v'taras hamachshava, and still this guy learning stam is on a much higher level because Torah is that much greater than mitzvahs. So we'll talk about that at length. The Nefesh HaHaim is going to explain about that, but we sort of understand that. We have a pasuk Torah, a ner mitzvah v'Torah or. A mitzvah is like a candle, and the Torah is like light itself. So think about, a candle, and think about even the sun. Think of what a candle, it can't hold a candle to the sun. So, light is all divine energy. So the Torah is divine energy. Mitzvahs are a little container, a little thing you do to tap in and to do the right thing and to avoid bad things. Mitzvahs are great and they're important and you get schar, but they're not the power of the Torah, which is life itself.
But something's in my eyes off with this equation.
Why?
Learning Limud Torah, if Limud Torah does not bring you to doing the mitzvot,
you're right about that. If
you learn problem there,
lo al manat lasot, then that's not good learning.
If you're a bench kvetcher, 24/7, and you're not giving back to the kehillah in some way, whatever it might be, you're a mashgiach, you're a mocher svarim, or you're a moel or something, or whatever it is, or whatever it might be, then it's something's being lost. Something's being lost.
Everybody's got to do their part, but learning Torah is itself a great contribution. The world is sustained through the power of Limud Torah. So a person who's just sitting in the base medrash learning is contributing greatly to the existence of the world. We'll talk more about it in Sha'ar Daled, so hold that thought. Gemara muchal lehadi begemara de erchin b'minei tochacha lishma ve'anava shelo lishma haminai wadifa marlei milo moidis da anava lishma adifa tamamar anava gedoyle mikulan shelo lishma nami adifa the Amar Rabbi Yochanan le'olam yasik adam mitzvah mitzvahs afilu shelo lishma shemitoch shelo lishma balishma umamela nishma the kavase nami be'esek HaTorah Milo moidis the Torah lishma vadai the adifa mi mitzvahs lishma share mishnah shleima shaninu Talmud Torah keneged kulam v'kein chilku razal b'yitron erech mailas HaTorah ala mitzvahs shezchus ve'or hamitzvahs bein beidna de asik ba bein beidna de lo asik ba hi rak magina min hayesurin ve'ena matzelet et ha'adam shelo yavo lidei chet. Okay, we're comparing the light of mitzvahs, whether you're doing them or not doing them at that particular time. They have the power to protect you from Yisurim. They don't protect you from getting into trouble. Shelo yavo lidei chet. Aval ora Torah gam lefi hamaskana sham al kol panim be'idna de asik ba, when you're learning Torah, he gam matzelet oto mechet ve'amr b'Yerushalmi de peah shekol hamitzvos einan shavim ledavar echad min haTorah k'mo she'yizbar lahalan mirtz Hashem b'Sha'ar Daled b'zeh. So that's what I mentioned. Kol chavatzecha lo yishve ba, that even all the mitzvahs are not shavim ledavar echad min haTorah. It is, I mean, Shimon, it may not be your cup of tea, but this is the manifesto of the yeshivas. This is Reb Chaim Volozhin, and it is putting the Torah on this huge pedestal that there's nothing like Limud Torah. And there's this magic aura and power of Limud Torah that's not in anything else. And this is the Haredi community, which is built on the yeshivas and the sanctity of Talmud Torah and putting that in front of everything else. There's an expression in Yiddish of Nor Torah, only Torah, and it's a big deal. People have given their lives for that idea of building a whole society around the yeshivas and Limud Torah. So that is the ethos of that community. So that's what he's talking about. Im kein gam esek Torah shelo lishma nami adifa mi mitzvahs lishma mizeh tam atzmo shemitoch shelo lishma balishma. Okay, we learned 2 prakim of the 8 prakim between Sha'ar Gimel and Sha'ar Daled and Nefesh HaHaim. Nice to be together with you, gentlemen. We'll Be'ez Hashem continue next week. Great to have you back, David. Take good care of yourself and your wife.
Thank you.
Warm regards. Take care.
All right.
Sha'ar.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.